Hi everyone, Harrison here and welcome back to our 10 best champions to main in Season 12 series. Today we're talking all about the mid lane. As we mentioned in the previous video, there'll be champions that you love playing and you think are OP, but remember there's only 10 spots on this list, so in our opinion, these are the best ones to go for heading into the new seasons. First off, we're going to talk about the late game powerhouse and level 16 win machine, Kassadin. Kassadin has absolutely been loving the meta since the shift in preseason with the new itemization, especially for AP champions and mages. The new crown of the Shattered Queen combined with Archangel's staff is as cheap as chips and makes you spike so much earlier than previously. As we've spoke about throughout the series, aside from those early game stomp fests, games are typically lasting longer with objective bounties and new overpowered dragon souls, so this aids scaling champions well, which in Kassadin's case is amazing. Kassadin still does have a weak pre-6 and laning phase in general, so it's imperative that you don't get too far behind during this period, but if you get out of lane safely and get those few items as soon as you can turn the Summoner's Rift into living hell for your enemies, and by that late game at level 16, you've bagged yourself a free win. Kassadin's damage with Rift Walk and his other bursty abilities is just so difficult to survive against, and now that his itemization makes him harder to shut down, he definitely belongs on this list. Next up, we've got the main man leading the glorious revolution and the co-creator of Hextech himself, Viktor. Viktor has absolutely burst onto the scene since the start of the preseason. Again, the new items have complemented him hugely, and honestly, he's an absolute monster at the moment. Viktor's early game isn't crazy strong, but it's not as bad as someone like Kassadin either. He's definitely far better going into the mid game though, where he starts to really pop off. Viktor spikes insanely hard with just those first few items and upgrades, and then starts absolutely blowing everyone up with his short cooldown abilities and his AoE damaging ultimate. Viktor works incredibly well into comps with AoE setup and engage, as this allows him to follow up and destroy everyone with his damage alongside his W delayed stun too. In the late game, Viktor is an absolute powerhouse. His abilities feel like they are always up and ready, and they just deal stupid amounts of damage. With his Q, he also gains insane close range burst alongside a juicy shield, so he's always very adept at dealing with close range threats. Viktor is going to be a huge champion season 12, so you should definitely start practicing him if you haven't already. Next up is yet another abuse of the new OP AP itemization changes, and that's going to be Cassiopeia. I feel like she's definitely the dark horse of the preseason, and now with a few of her mid lane peers nerfed, she's starting to show how strong she is. Cassiopeia is definitely a champion who needs the right player behind her to understand how mechanically demanding and intensive she is. Cassiopeia has to constantly move around and abuse her movement speed steroids while also spamming those E's and consistently hitting those Qs too. Then Cassiopeia's ultimate is just another thing altogether. This can either be completely useless or immensely game changing, and it's amazingly satisfying pulling off a 5-man flash ult. Cassiopeia is definitely going to be a very contested champion in Season 12, as a new itemization, meta and game state all suit her perfectly, so if you get the right matchup, you'll easily run away with the game on this champion, even without boots. Next up, we've got one of the most recent additions to the game, and that's Vex. This champion is just insanely fun, and her ultimate is so disgusting when you get those resets. Vex is honestly crazy powerful once you get snowballing, and she can easily do that due to her ability to gank and roam so effectively, as well as just being strong enough to pop off in lane and find kills with a CC and burst. Vex was originally thought to be this huge anti-mobility counter, but in actual fact she's kinda turned into an AoE mage assassin. The amount of damage you can deal to entire teams after diving with the ultimate is simply mental, and then she can continue to fight thanks to those resets. If you pair this champion with any allies that can dive alongside her, she's a monumental threat and can definitely win games by herself. Vex does struggle in lanes where she gets outranged though, so be careful when picking her up if you're first pick, but just remember if your lane sucks, just carry the rest of the map instead. Vex is a super fun champion and in a very good spot as we head into Season 12. Lux is the next champion on this list, and I'm sure you all expected her to be here. Believe it or not, Lux was the most played champion across all elos in the entirety of Season 11. She's incredibly popular, and now that she's actually in a very good position and performing well, this number is only going to get higher. Lux very basic in the way that she plays. Land your abilities, win the game. Miss them and you're useless. Lux is all about wave clearing with ease, catching out your enemies with your combo, and constantly forcing your enemies to fight with a numbers disadvantage. Landing that huge 5-man laser is insanely fun to play with in teamfights, and the fun part is that with its stupidly low cooldown, you can use it again and again. Lux works pretty well across the board into all drafts and team compositions, making her a fantastic pick in most games. She also works well as a support at the moment too, so by picking her up in your mid lane champion pool, you'll also help you when you get autofilled. If you're looking for a consistent champion to help you in that Season 12 grind, Lux is definitely one to go for. Now we've got the Master of Shadows, and if you're looking for someone to impress your friends with, Zed is definitely up there with the best picks to choose. Zed has been in League of Legends for such a long time, and when he first came along, he was just such a defining champion when it came to outplays. This champion's ability to overcome the odds in duels and fights makes him such a fun one to play and watch, but not so fun to play against. He's very unpredictable, and if he lands a triple shuriken, there's not many people that are going to survive that. Zed does have a lot of difficult matchup these days compared to what he used to, and with so many mages stacking crowns, Zhonyas, and staying at a long range, it's pretty difficult to adjust to. But when you get used to it, you can absolutely slap and have a ton of fun while doing so. Learning the matchups will definitely be part of picking up this champion, but when you do, you'll reap the rewards in Season 12. Next up on our list, we got Katarina. Katarina has always been a true pentakill machine, and honestly, despite getting no real change from the Season 12 itemization, she's still performing exceptionally well, either at stomping low elo or even when mastered in the top tiers. Last season, Katarina had one of the highest win rates in challenges, so it just shows how potent she is in the right hands. Katarina is definitely one of those champions with a high risk, high reward playstyle, and if you start snowballing, you know that you're going to have a fun time. Katarina does have a fair amount of poor matchups, which is a main problem during that early lane phase. However, if you manage to come out of lane on top or even, you can really get settled into the game and become the carry you wanted to be. Katarina's ability to clean up fights, farm multi-kills, and claim countless resets are really what makes her such a great champion. The daggers, dashes, and disgusting damage is truly what makes Katarina so strong, and those things have never disappeared even with tons of buffs, nerfs, and even a complete rework. Due to the rest of the meta exploding, especially in the mid lane recently, Katarina has actually flown pretty under the radar, so she's not drawing too much attention right now. So if you feel like embracing your inner one trick and changing your name to Kitty Kata Winner 2022, then now might be a good time to do it. Twisted Fate is easily one of the most influential champions to play in the mid lane, and that's why we couldn't get through this list without involving him. Twisted Fate still has one of the most unique item builds in the game, and once you've completed your Everfrost and Rapid Fire Cannon, you can pick out and lock down enemies from so far away and completely shut them out of the match. Twisted Fate's strengths really lie in his ability to influence and control the map throughout the early to mid game though. He can gank easier and more often than most of the mid laners, and he can just make the game so hard for his opponents by abusing his ultimate. Twisted Fate also offers great wave clear and even has the option of split pushing too, meaning there's always a way that you can win those games by yourself even when truly against the odds. I think a big thing people forget about Twisted Fate is that your passive grants you extra gold when you're killing minions, so as long as you're just farming well, you're going to get your cheap item spike very soon and be able to really have an impact. Next up on the list, we've got Yone, and honestly, he's still incredibly strong despite there being so many potent threats in that mid lane right now. Yone has benefited hugely from the new lethal tempo and allows him to be so much stronger so much earlier in the game. Playing against a Yone feels pretty similar to playing against a Master Yi right now. Hard CC is the best way to kill him, but without it, he'll just destroy your whole team. If Yone gets an early lead and gets his core items online quickly, he's going to abuse the Summoner's Rift. Yone is definitely one of the scariest champs to play against when he's ahead, as in some lanes he'll literally just dive you again and again with his E and his ultimate. He's also exceptionally difficult to gank in the mid lane, a few charges of his Q and he's away scot-free. Once he's 6, he can even use that to escape too, but the thing is, half the time Yone doesn't even need to escape because he can just 1v2 anyway. Yone has always had a solid amount of success in the top lane, but we feel like he has a ton of strength mid where he can look to influence the map and affect the game with his fantastic ability to roam to early fights and gank other lanes. Yone is the ultimate pub stomping force in the mid lane, and that's why he deserves a place on this list. Finally, in the last spot on this list, we've got Corki. This champion is one of those picks that has been very strong for quite some time, but people just haven't played him enough. As we've already covered in recent videos, Corki is genuinely a very scary pick in the mid lane this patch. Corki has 2 incredibly strong build paths. One, he can go down the Immortal Shield Bow route and become a mixed damage monster with his auto attacks, abilities, and rockets dealing tons of damage. This helps him scale super hard and makes him an insanely hard to shut down long range nuke machine. If you get too close, he'll pop you with a Q and auto attack. And then the other option is his hybrid setup. Mirror Mana, Ravenous Hydra, and Luden's Tempest, which makes him deal a monstrous mana burst and long range AoE nuke with his rockets. Both build options are perfectly viable right now and borderline abusable. Corki has a pretty safe laning phase despite it being relatively weak, and his mid to late game just is absolutely absurd. Combine all of these strengths with Corki's passive dealing an immense amount of AoE damage and disruption when contesting objectives, and you've got a definite mid lane pick to shred Season 12 solo queue with. That's going to conclude our 10 best champions in the mid lane for Season 12 video. We hope you enjoyed it and can agree with our list. I'm sure there's plenty of champions you think deserve a place on this list, but unfortunately we only had room for 10. Don't forget to stop by tomorrow to check out our 10 best champions for the bot lane. All the best for Season 12, and we'll see you soon.